we investigate mysteries of the unknown. This is Sigh Legends. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Sigh Legends. My name is Mike L. Flickner, and today we got two interesting stories for you. The first is about two animals who are uncharacteristically acting like humans to some extent. Our story comes from a book that was written by John Patterson, Colonel John Patterson, and this dates back to the 1800s. This story, of course, is the man-eaters of Salvo. The Salvo man-eaters were a pair of man-eating male lions in the Salvo region of Kenya, which were responsible for the deaths of dozens of construction workers on the Kenya-Uganda Railway between March and December 1898. They are notable for their unusual behavior of killing men and the manner of their attacks. The workers referred to them as the ghost in the darkness, as they believed them to be supernatural in nature due to they did not hunt and behave as normal lions do. Lions usually hang together in prides consisting of a male lion and several lionesses, with the female doing the hunting and killing for the pride. It is rare that two male lions hunt together, and the way these two could reason things out was incredible. Nothing like this has ever happened before or since. As part of the construction of a railway linking Uganda with the Indian Ocean at Kilindini Harbor in March 1898, the British started building a railway bridge over the Savo River in Kenya. The building site consisted of several camps spread over an area of 8 miles, accommodating the several thousand mostly Indian workers. The project was led by Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson, who arrived just days before the disappearances and killings began. During the next 9 months of construction, two maneless male Savo lions stalked the campsite, dragging workers from their tents at night, devouring them. There was an interval of several months when the attacks ceased, but word trickled in from other nearby settlements of similar lion attacks. When the lions returned, the attacks intensified, with almost daily killings. Crews tried to scare off the lions and built campfires and bomas, or thorn fences made of whistling thorn trees, around their camp for protection to keep the man-eaters out, all to no avail. The lions leaped over or crawled through the thorn fences. Patterson noted that early in their killing spree, only one lion at a time would enter the inhabited areas and seize victims, but later they became more brazen, entering together and each seizing a victim. As the attacks mounted, hundreds of workers fled from Salvo, halting construction on the bridge. At this point, colonial officials began to intervene. According to Patterson, even the district officer, Mr. Whitehead, narrowly escaped being killed by one of the lions after arriving at the Salvo train depot. In the evening, however, his assistant, Abdullah, was killed while Whitehead escaped with 4 claw lacerations running down his back. After a while, the killings of the lions took a more macabre twist, especially with the discovery of their den by Patterson. It seemed in a way that the lions somehow may be killing for the joy of killing, and maybe even being taking trophies for themselves. Eventually, other officials arrived with a reinforcement of around 20 armed sepoys to assist in the hunt. Patterson set traps and tried several times to ambush the lions at night from a tree. After repeated unsuccessful attempts, he shot the first lion on the 9th of December, 1898. 20 days later, the second lion was found and killed. The first lion measured 9 foot 8 inches from nose to the tip of the tail. It took 8 men to carry the carcass back to the camp. Patterson wrote in his account that he wounded the first lion with 1 bullet from a high-caliber rifle. This shot struck the lion in its hind leg, but it escaped. Later it returned at night and began stalking Patterson as he tried to hunt it. He shot it through the shoulder, penetrating its heart with a more powerful rifle, and found it lying dead the next morning not far from his platform. The second lion was shot at up to 9 times, 5 with the same rifle, 3 with the second, and once with a third rifle, 6 finding their mark. The first shot was fired from atop a scaffolding that Patterson had built near a goat killed by the lion. 2 shots from a second rifle hit the lion. 11 days later, as it was stalking Patterson and trying to flee, when they found the lion the next day, Patterson shot it 3 more times with the same rifle, severely crippling it, and he shot it 3 times with a third rifle, twice in the chest and once in the head, which killed it. He claimed it died gnawing on a fallen tree branch, still trying to reach him. The construction crew returned and finished the bridge in February 1899. The exact number of people killed by the lions is unclear. Patterson gave several figures, overall claiming that there were 135 victims. At the end of the crisis, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Lord Salisbury, addressed the House of the Lords on the subject of the Tsavo man-eaters. The whole of the works were put to a stop because a pair of man-eating lions appeared in the locality and conceived a most unfortunate taste for our workmen. At last the laborers entirely declined to carry on unless they were guarded by iron entrenchments. Of course, it is difficult to work a railway under these conditions, and until we found an enthusiastic sportsman to get rid of these lions, our enterprise was seriously hindered. After 25 years as Patterson's floor rugs, the lion skins were sold to the Field Museum of Natural History in 1924 for the sum of $5,000. The skins arrived to the museum in very poor condition. The lions were reconstructed and are now on permanent display, along with their skulls. Theories for man-eating behavior of the lions have been reviewed by Peter Hans and Nosk, as well as Dr. Bruce D. Patterson in 2004. Their discussions included the following: an outbreak of rinderpest, a cattle plague in 1898, devastating the lions' usual prey, forcing them to find alternative food sources, and the Tsavo lions may have been accustomed to finding dead humans at the Tsavo River crossing slave caravans to the center of the East African slave trade. Zanzibar routinely crossed the river there. The scientific analysis does not differentiate between entire human corpses consumed compared to parts of the individual prey, since the attacks often raised alarm, forcing the lions to slink back into the surrounding area. Many workers over the long constructive period went missing, died in accidents, or simply left out of fear. So it is likely almost all the builders who stayed on knew someone missing or supposedly eaten. It appears that Colonel Patterson may have exaggerated his claims, as the subsequent investigators, though none of these modern studies have taken into account the people who were killed but not eaten by the animals. The diet of the victims would also affect their isotopic signature. A low meat diet would produce a signature more typical of herbivores in the victims, affecting the outcome of the test. That fact is important to note, since many of the workers of the Tsavo were Hindus and may have had a vegetarian diet. This research also excludes but does not disprove the claims that the lions were not eating the victims they killed, but merely killing just to kill. Similar claims have been made on other wildlife predators. The lions are now still on display at the Chicago Field Museum. And in quoting from the movie The Ghost in the Darkness, if you gaze into their eyes, you will be afraid. Wow, kind of makes you think twice about getting on your household cat now for knocking dishes off the table, don't it? There is one thing about the lions of Tsavo that is a better known fact, but did not make it into the video. John Patterson had the idea that the lions were actually stalking the hospital. Malaria was running very, very high at the time in the camp of Tsavo. And in their hospital, the lions were stalking it because they could smell the death and they smelled the blood. So Patterson decided to set up a trap there for the animals. So he had all the patients moved from the hospital to a new location, which is a mile or so away from the original hospital. And he set up camp there one night. He covered the walls with extra blood and animal meat and carcasses and such, waiting on these lions to show up. But they didn't show up. In fact, they fooled him. They showed up at the new hospital and drug off even more people. So, what's the motivation behind these lions? Could they be demons? Maybe demons jumped into these lions? Anyway, we're going to move on to our next series. Our next series is about a graveyard, a cemetery that's located not far from E-Town, Kentucky. Of course, I'm talking about the famous Casey Cemetery. Back in the years of 2008 and 2010, Sigh had the opportunity to investigate Hell's Gate, also known as Casey Cemetery, located in historic Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Hell's Gate has had a long history of flashing orbs of light to glowing tombstones to EVPs, disembodied voices. The cemetery itself never let us down as far as acquiring evidence of the paranormal. We even captured the glowing tombstone. This effect, when we took the pictures, we couldn't see the tombstone glowing at the time, and this was taken without a flash. We looked at it and it appeared to be glowing, just as everybody claimed that the tombstones did. And if you look closely, you can see where the blades of grass around the bottom there, that they're backlit. So it appears that the tombstone itself actually is glowing. We had no explanation for this effect. While at the cemetery, we also seen the strange balls of light that people were talking about, shooting in and out between the limbs of the trees. Take a look at some of these pictures and see what you see as far as the balls of light. We also did many lengthy EVP sessions, also using a K2 meter. You would get hits on the K2 meter in direct response to questions I was asking, And later on, when we played our tapes back, we caught EVPs along with it. Listen to this one where I asked about the Casey family being buried at the cemetery and see what the response was. See what you hear. Did you hear it? We think it says Casey's men are all dead. Later on in the investigation, we decided to do a setting with a K2 meter, and I was asking the spirits if anyone was present, could they please come up and light the meter up. When we reviewed our EVP recorders afterwards, we received this strange EVP. If you understand what I'm saying to you, please make the lights flash. Thank you. Did you hear it? We believe it's saying, I touched your light. When we investigated the Casey Cemetery, we received permission from the Kentucky State Police Department. And this was fine for a while, but due to other people who wanted to party and vandalize the cemetery, all further investigations were no longer. This story of Casey Cemetery actually aired about 5 years ago as a Southern Indiana Ghost Hunter Chronicles short. In all, we had made 2 visits to the cemetery. This was one of the first visits that we made to Casey Cemetery. The second visit, nothing really happened that much at the cemetery, and it was actually interrupted by some people that were partying that night and came by. But the interesting thing that happened on the second one, we had a brand new investigator with us. And I'm not going to mention her name to protect her privacy. But we all rode together in a van together that was driven by Michael Smith, one of my lead investigators at the time. And as we were leaving the cemetery, I was in the back seat with the new investigator, and she was acting strange. She just had a dead stare on her face. And so I asked her, I said, what's wrong? And she looked at me really puzzled, almost frightened, and said, who are you? Well, this kind of puzzled me. I said, well, you know who I am. I'm Mike. And she even stepped back a little bit further in the seat and said, who are you? I said, it's me. It's Mike Fleckner. I said, do you know where you're at? And she just kind of dead stared and said, no, where am I? And I said, we just left the cemetery. And she got an even more frightful look on her face and turned away and just stared forward. This went on for the next 40 minutes or so before finally she started coming around. And when she did, she started talking again. It was the normal person. And I said, do you remember where we were at? And she said, well, yeah, we just left the cemetery. It's like, well, we just left 40 minutes ago. She said, no, we just pulled out. And I said, no. You've been gone for 40 some odd minutes. Of course, she didn't believe it. But this actually really did take place. Now, what could have happened to her? Where did she go? And who actually came back with us? I don't have an answer for that question. So, take it upon yourself. Drop us a comment down below and let us know what you think. Anyway, thank you for your time sticking with us today on Sigh Legends. We'll see you next time around.